me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we were a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harebury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea, and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am. But heavens, Lang, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the markets this morning, sir.
No cucumbers?
Yes, sir. I went to town twice.
That will do, Lang. Thank you. I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, but there being no cucumbers, not even ready money.
It makes no matter, Algernon. I have some crumpets with Lady Harebury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Fairhair. She is such a nice woman who is so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to it.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact is I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. The shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. As far as an improvement in his ailment goes, I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury for me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has particularly said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, and if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you will kindly come to the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. After a few expurgations, French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming quite suddenly back into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl since I met you.
I am quite well aware of the fact, and I have often wished that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is often mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has made its way to the provincial pulpits, I am told. And for me, my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon told me he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how this makes me feel.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean that you wouldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean you would not love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know it.
Personally, darling, I don't quite like the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are much nicer names than Ernest. Jack, for instance. Charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, are more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Warren?
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you have not said anything at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
It would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair for me to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing?
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
Mine one. I have never loved anyone in the world other than you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you'll always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from that recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished? What? Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit it, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young woman as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma.
In the carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
I do admit, Lady Bracknell, that I do smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many ideal men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers suffers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes, and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties enacted from one's after death, from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, about 1,500 acres. I believe, but I don't depend on it for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make on it, the poachers seem to get more income than I do.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, which is lent to an older lady, Lady Blossom. I can get it back whenever I like, with 6 months' notice.
Lady Blossom. I don't know her.
Oh yeah, she goes about very little. She is very lately considered in life.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number is Belgrave Square?
149.
An unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of stone. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be closer to the truth to say that they have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing. Worthing is a place in Sussex, a country resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag, a somewhat large, black leather with handles to it. An ordinary handbag.
In what locality did Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In a cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given in by mistake for his own.
The cloakroom in Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I was somewhat bewildered by what you told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display contempt of the ordinary decencies of life, family life. That reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what the unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at the railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion as possibly, indeed, been used for the purpose before now. I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't know how I could possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment.
You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.